A single mom stopped on Route 66 to save a stranger's life. She had no idea he was the leader of one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in the country. What she also didn't know was that saving him would cost her everything she had left. But when the bikers found out what happened to her, they made a vow, and no one breaks a vow to the Brotherhood. Hannah Cooper's hands hurt. They always did by the end of her shift at the diner. Grease under her nails, smell of burnt coffee in her hair. She gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan and kept her eyes on the road ahead. Route 66 stretched out in front of her, empty, quiet, the kind of quiet that made you think too much. She was tired, not just today, every day. 2 jobs, a daughter waiting at home, bills that never stopped coming. This was her life now. The sun was low, the light was fading. She blinked hard and rolled down the window. The air helped a little. Then she saw it, something in the road. She slowed down. Her heart picked up. At first she thought it was an animal, a deer maybe. But as she got closer she realized it wasn't. It was a motorcycle lying on its side, twisted metal, broken glass scattered across the asphalt, and next to it, a man. He wasn't moving. Hannah hit the brakes. The car jerked to a stop. She sat there for a second, hands frozen on the wheel. Her mind was screaming at her to keep driving. This wasn't her problem. She had Sophie at home. She couldn't afford to get involved. But her hands were already opening the door. She stepped out. The air was cooler now. She could hear the wind. Nothing else. No other cars, no voices, just her and whatever had happened here. She walked closer. Her legs felt heavy. The man was face down. His leather jacket was torn. His helmet had come off and was a few feet away. There was a dead deer near the edge of the road. That's what he'd hit. Hannah knelt beside him. Her hands were shaking. "Hey," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. She reached out and touched his shoulder carefully. He was warm. That was good. That meant he was alive. She rolled him onto his back slowly. His face was pale. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. She could see his chest moving, but barely. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please." She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so bad it took her 3 tries to unlock it. She dialed 911. The operator answered. "There's been an accident," Hannah said. Her voice was steady now, focused. "Route 66, about 10 miles west of the state line. A man on a motorcycle hit a deer. He's unconscious. He's breathing, but I don't know for how long." The operator asked her questions. Hannah answered them. She kept one hand on the man's chest. She needed to feel him breathing. "Help is on the way," the operator said. "Stay on the line." Hannah nodded, even though no one could see her. She looked down at the man's face. He was older than her, maybe mid-40s. His hair was dark, streaked with gray. There was a scar across his jaw. He looked tough, like someone who'd lived a hard life. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know his name, but she couldn't leave him here alone. "You're going to be okay," she said quietly. She didn't know if that was true, but she said it anyway. His eyes flickered just for a second. He tried to focus on her face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. "Don't talk," Hannah said. "Just breathe. Help is coming." He looked at her, really looked at her like he was trying to memorize her face. Then his eyes closed again. Hannah's heart dropped. "No, no. Stay with me, please." She could hear sirens in the distance now, faint, but getting closer. The man's hand twitched. He was still there, still fighting. Hannah kept her hand on his chest. She could feel his heartbeat. Slow, uneven, but there. "You're not alone," she said. I'm right here. The sirens got louder. Red and blue lights appeared on the horizon. The ambulance was coming. Hannah stayed where she was. She didn't move, not until the paramedics pulled up and rushed over with their equipment. "Ma'am, we've got him," one of them said. Hannah stepped back. Her legs were numb. She watched them work. They moved fast, checking his vitals, putting a brace around his neck, loading him onto a stretcher. "Is he going to make it?" Hannah asked. One of the paramedics glanced at her. "We're doing everything we can." That wasn't an answer, but it was all she was going to get. They lifted him into the ambulance. The doors closed. The sirens started again, and just like that, they were gone. Hannah stood there in the middle of the road alone. The wind picked up. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. She didn't know why she'd stopped. She didn't know why she'd stayed. She just knew she couldn't have left him there. She walked back to her car, got in, closed the door. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophie's babysitter. "Everything okay? You're running late." Hannah typed back quickly. "On my way. Sorry." She started the engine, took one last look at the empty road behind her. Then she drove away. She didn't know his name. She didn't know if he'd survive. She didn't know that in a few days, men in leather jackets would show up at her door, looking for answers. She didn't know that saving his life would change everything. He didn't know who she was, but he remembered her hands and her voice and the way she stayed when everyone else would have driven past. Richard Mallory woke up 3 days later. The hospital room was white, too white. The lights hurt his eyes. He tried to sit up and pain shot through his ribs. He stayed down. A nurse came in. She smiled at him like he was supposed to be happy about something. "Welcome back, Mr. Mallory," she said. "You gave us quite a scare." Richard's throat was dry. "Water." She poured him a cup. He drank it slowly. His whole body felt like it had been run over, which he supposed it had. "What happened?" he asked. "You hit a deer on Route 66, the nurse said. "You're lucky to be alive. Someone called 911, stayed with you until the ambulance arrived." Richard closed his eyes. He remembered the deer, the impact, the bike going down, and then hands, a voice soft, telling him to stay. "Who was it?" he asked. The nurse looked at her chart. "I don't know. The paramedics said a woman was there when they arrived, but she left before they could get her information." Richard's jaw tightened. Someone had saved his life, and he didn't even know who she was. The door opened. Jason Mallister walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a graying beard and a leather vest that had seen better days. He stopped when he saw Richard awake. "Brother," Jason said. His voice was rough, relieved. "How long?" Richard asked. 3 days. We've been taking shifts, waiting for you to wake up." Richard nodded. "That's what family did. The woman who called it in. Find her." Jason pulled up a chair. "We've been looking. The 911 call came from a cell phone registered to a Hannah Cooper. Lives about 20 minutes from where you went down." "You talked to her?" "Not yet. Wanted to wait until you were awake. Figured you'd want to be part of it." Richard nodded. "Tomorrow." Jason hesitated. "You sure you're ready?" "Tomorrow." Jason knew better than to argue. "All right, I'll set it up." The next evening, Jason pulled up to a small house on the outskirts of town. The paint was peeling. The yard was overgrown. A rusty sedan sat in the driveway. He knocked on the door. A woman answered. Mid-30s. Brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired. The kind of tired that didn't go away with sleep. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was cautious. "Hannah Cooper?" Her eyes narrowed. Who's asking? Jason took off his sunglasses. My name's Jason. I'm looking for the woman who helped a man on Route 66 3 nights ago. The one who called 911. Hannah's face went blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Ma'am, I'm not here to cause trouble. The man you helped, his name is Richard Mallory. He's my brother. He's alive because of you. We just want to say thank you. Hannah crossed her arms. I did what anyone would do. There's nothing to thank me for. Not everyone stops, Jason said quietly. Hannah looked past him at the street like she was checking to see if anyone else was out there. I need to get back inside. My daughter. Mom. A small voice came from behind her. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, peeked around Hannah's leg. She had big eyes and messy braids. Hannah put a hand on her daughter's shoulder. It's okay, Sophie. Go back to your show. Sophie didn't move. She stared at Jason with open curiosity. Jason smiled at her. Hey there. Are you a biker? Sophie asked. Sophie, Hannah said sharply. Yes, I am, Jason said. Sophie's eyes went wide. Cool. Hannah gently pushed her back inside. Go now. Sophie disappeared. Hannah turned back to Jason. Her face was hard now, closed off. Look, she said, I'm glad your friend is okay, but I don't want any trouble. I don't know you. I don't know him. I just happened to be driving by. That's it. Jason studied her. She was scared. Not of him exactly, but of something. Can I ask you something? He said. Hannah didn't answer. Why'd you leave before the paramedics could talk to you? I had to get home. That's not why. Hannah's jaw tightened. I don't owe you an explanation. No, Jason said. You don't. But Richard remembers you. He remembers your hands, your voice. He wants to thank you himself. Hannah shook her head. Tell him he's welcome, and tell him to forget about me. She started to close the door. Wait, Jason said. If you ever need anything. I don't, Hannah said, and she shut the door. Jason stood there for a moment. Then he walked back to his bike. He didn't leave right away. He sat there looking at the house. He noticed things. The envelope taped to the door with red letters. The broken gutter hanging off the roof. The lawn that hadn't been mowed in weeks. This woman was barely holding on. And she'd still stopped to save Richard's life. Jason started his bike and drove away. But he didn't forget what he'd seen. 2 days later, Jason walked into Richard's hospital room. Richard was sitting up now, still bruised, still healing, but stronger. Did you find her? Richard asked. Jason nodded. I did. And she doesn't want anything to do with us. Richard frowned. Why? Jason sat down. I don't know, but she's scared of something. I could see it. Scared of what? Not sure, but I saw her house, Richard. She's struggling bad. Richard was quiet for a moment. What do you mean? Jason told him. The peeling paint, the overgrown yard, the envelope on the door, the little girl watching from behind her mother's leg. She saved your life, Jason said, and she's drowning. Richard stared at the ceiling, his hands clenched into fists. Find out more. Richard, I'm not letting this go, Jason. Someone saves my life and I find out they're in trouble. That's not how we do things. Jason nodded slowly. All right, I'll dig around quietly. Good. Jason stood to leave, but he stopped at the door. Richard, she told me to tell you to forget about her. Richard looked at him. I can't. Jason spent the next week asking questions. He talked to people in town quietly, carefully. He didn't want to spook Hannah or put her in a worse position. He learned she worked 2 jobs, one at a diner, one cleaning offices at night. She'd been doing it for 2 years, ever since her husband left. He learned she had a daughter, Sophie, 7 years old, smart kid. Teachers loved her. He learned Hannah was behind on her mortgage, way behind. The bank had sent her multiple warnings. She was 2 months away from losing her house. Jason sat in his truck outside the diner where Hannah worked. He watched her through the window. She moved fast, refilling coffee, taking orders, smiling at customers even though he could see how tired she was. She left work at 3, drove straight to the school to pick up Sophie, then home, then out again at 7 for her night shift. Jason followed her to the office building. He watched her go inside with a bucket and a mop. He sat there in the dark parking lot, thinking. This woman had every reason to keep driving that night. She had a kid to take care of, bills to pay, a life that was barely holding together. But she'd stopped anyway. Jason pulled out his phone and called Richard. "I found out what's going on," he said. Richard listened. When Jason finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Richard said, "Set up a meeting with the whole club." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." The clubhouse was full. 20 bikers sat around the long table. Some had been riding with Richard for decades. Others were newer, but they all wore the same patch. They all called each other brother. Richard stood at the head of the table. He'd been released from the hospital that morning. He was still moving slow, still healing, but he was there. Jason stood beside him. "Most of you know what happened," Richard said. His voice was steady, strong. "I went down on Route 66, hit a deer. Could have died out there, but someone stopped. A woman. She stayed with me, called for help, kept me alive until the paramedics got there." The room was quiet. Everyone was listening. "Her name is Hannah Cooper," Richard continued. "She's a single mother, works 2 jobs, raising a little girl on her own, and she's about to lose her house." One of the bikers, an older man named Dutch, leaned forward. "What's that got to do with us?" Richard looked at him. "She saved my life, Dutch, and it looks like it cost her everything." Another biker spoke up. His name was Carter, younger, skeptical. "How do you figure?" Jason stepped in. "She missed work the night she helped Richard. Got written up. Then she was late the next day because she couldn't sleep. Got written up again. 2 strikes. She's one more mistake away from getting fired. And without that job, she loses the house for sure." Carter crossed his arms. "That's rough, but people have hard lives. We can't save everyone." "We're not talking about everyone," Richard said. His voice had an edge now. "We're talking about the woman who saved me." "With respect, boss," Carter said. "We don't know her. We don't know what she wants. Maybe she doesn't want our help." "She doesn't," Jason said. "I already talked to her. She told me to leave her alone." The room shifted. A few bikers exchanged glances. Dutch spoke again. "Then why are we here?" Richard's jaw tightened. "Because I owe her. We owe her. And I don't care if she wants our help or not. We're going to find a way to give it." Carter shook his head. "This doesn't feel right, Richard. Forcing help on someone who doesn't want it. That's not who we are." "No," Richard said, "but leaving someone to drown when we can pull them out. That's not who we are either." The room went quiet again. A woman's voice cut through the silence. "I agree with Richard." Everyone turned. A woman sat near the back. Her name was Diane. She'd been riding with the club for 15 years. She didn't speak often, but when she did, people listened. "Go on," Richard said. Diane stood up. "I've been where that woman is after my divorce. 2 kids, no money. I was drowning. And you know what saved me?" She looked around the room. "This club. You didn't ask if I wanted help. You just showed up, fixed my car, paid my electric bill, watched my kids, so I could work. You didn't make a big deal out of it. You just did it." She paused. "Let that sink in." "This woman doesn't know us," Diane continued. "She probably thinks we're dangerous. Hell, maybe she's got good reason to think that, but that doesn't mean we walk away. We find a way to help her quietly, without making her feel like she owes us." Dutch nodded slowly. "All right, I'm in." One by one, the others agreed, even Carter. He didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. Richard looked around the table. "Good. Jason's been digging into her situation. Jason, tell them what you found." Jason pulled out a folder. Hannah Cooper, 34 years old, married at 22. Husband walked out 3 years ago, left her with a 7-year-old daughter and a mortgage she can't afford. She works at Betty's Diner during the day, Clean's offices at night. She's 2 months behind on her house payments. The bank sent her a final notice last week. If she doesn't come up with $50,000 in the next 6 weeks, they're taking the house. Someone whistled low. 50 grand? Dutch said. That's a lot. It is, Jason agreed, but it's not impossible. Richard leaned forward. We've done fundraisers before, rides for veterans, toy drives. We can do this. Carter spoke up again. And if she finds out? If she figures out we're behind it? Then we deal with it, Richard said. But we do it anyway. Hannah didn't notice the bikers at first. She was too busy, too tired, too focused on getting through each day. But then, small things started happening. A regular at the diner left her a $100 tip. When she tried to give it back, he said, "Keep it. You earned it." An envelope showed up in her mailbox. No return address. $500 in cash. A note that said, "For Sophie." Someone paid her electric bill. The power company called to confirm. She told them there must be a mistake. They said there wasn't. Hannah sat at her kitchen table staring at the envelope. Her hands were shaking. Sophie was doing homework at the table. She looked up. "What's wrong, Mom?" Hannah forced a smile. "Nothing, baby. Just someone did something nice." "That's good, right?" "Yeah," Hannah said, but her voice didn't sound sure. Jason watched from across the street. He saw Hannah go inside her house, saw the lights turn on, saw her shadow move past the window. He'd been the one to pay her electric bill anonymously, just like Richard had told him to. But watching her now, he wondered if they were doing the right thing. His phone buzzed, a text from Richard. "How'd it go?" Jason typed back. "Done, but I don't think she's happy about it." "She doesn't have to be happy. She just has to be safe." Jason put his phone away. He started his bike and rode off. 2 days later, Hannah got another surprise. She was cleaning an office building when her supervisor approached her. "Hannah, can I talk to you for a minute?" Hannah's stomach dropped. She thought she was getting fired. "Did I do something wrong?" No. The supervisor said quickly. "Actually, the opposite. We got a call from a local business. They want to sponsor some of our staff, help with expenses. You're on the list." Hannah blinked. "What?" "They're offering to cover 1 month of your mortgage. No strings attached. They just want to help." Hannah felt dizzy. "Who is it? What business?" The supervisor checked her notes. "It's anonymous. They didn't want recognition. They just wanted to help people in need." Hannah sat down. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "Are you okay?" the supervisor asked. Hannah nodded, but she wasn't okay. She was terrified. Someone was helping her, and she didn't know who or why or what they wanted in return. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through possibilities in her mind. Maybe it was a church, maybe a charity, maybe someone who'd heard about her situation and wanted to help. But deep down, she knew it was the bikers. It had to be. She got out of bed and went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were still shaking. She thought about the man she'd saved, Richard Mallory. She'd looked him up online after Jason came to her door. Found out he was the leader of a motorcycle club, not a gang, but not exactly saints either. She'd also found out he'd been in the hospital for 3 days, that he'd woken up asking about her. Hannah closed her eyes. She didn't want this. She didn't want to owe anyone anything, especially not people like them. But she also didn't want to lose her house. She hated herself for even thinking it. But the thought was there. If they wanted to help, maybe she should let them. No, she couldn't. She wouldn't. She'd find another way. The next morning, Hannah drove to the bank. She asked to speak to Janet Holloway, the loan manager. Janet was a woman in her 50s, professional, cold. She'd been the one to send Hannah the final notice. "Miss Cooper," Janet said, not bothering to smile. "What can I do for you?" Hannah sat down. "I need more time." Janet sighed. "We've already given you extensions, multiple extensions. I can't keep pushing this back." "I know, but I'm working on it. I just need a little more time." Janet opened Hannah's file, looked at the numbers. "You're 2 months behind, nearly 15,000 in arrears. Even if I wanted to help you, my hands are tied. The bank has rules. I'll pay it," Hannah said. Her voice was desperate now. "I just need 6 weeks. Janet interrupted. "That's all you have left. If you don't have the full amount by then, the house goes to auction." Hannah felt tears burning behind her eyes. She refused to let them fall. "There has to be something." "There isn't," Janet said, not unkindly but firmly. "I'm sorry, Miss Cooper. I really am. But this is business." Hannah stood up. She didn't trust herself to speak. She just walked out. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Just sat there trying to breathe, trying not to fall apart. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was Sophie's school. Hannah answered. "Hello, Miss Cooper. This is Principal Davidson. Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to let you know that someone made a donation to the school in Sophie's name. It's covering her lunch account for the rest of the year, and there's some left over for field trips." Hannah closed her eyes. "Who was it?" "Anonymous," the principal said, "but very generous. I wanted to make sure you knew." "Thank you," Hannah whispered, and she hung up. She sat there in her car and finally let herself cry. That night, Jason got a call from one of the guys who worked at the school, a biker named Tony. His wife was a teacher there. "She's asking questions," Tony said. "Hannah Cooper, she knows someone's helping her and she's not happy about it." Jason sighed. "What did she say?" "She didn't say anything, but my wife said she looked scared, like she thinks someone's going to come asking for favors." Jason rubbed his face. "All right, thanks for the heads up." He hung up and called Richard. "We've got a problem," Jason said. "What kind of problem?" "She knows or she suspects, and she's scared." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Then we need to talk to her face to face." "You sure that's a good idea?" "No," Richard admitted, "but we can't keep doing this behind her back. She deserves to know the truth." Jason hesitated. Then he said, "All right, I'll set it up." 2 days later, Jason knocked on Hannah's door again. She opened it. Her face was hard, guarded. "I thought I told you to leave me alone," she said. "You did," Jason said, "but we need to talk." "About what?" "About the help you've been getting." Hannah's jaw clenched. "So it was you." Jason didn't deny it. "Can I come in?" No. Jason nodded. Fair enough. Then I'll say it out here. Richard wants to meet you, talk to you, explain why we're doing this. I don't want to meet him. I know. But he's not going to stop until you do. Hannah crossed her arms. Why? Why does he care so much? Jason looked at her. Really looked at her. Because you saved his life. And he can't live with himself knowing you're drowning because of it. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, Jason said gently, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve one. Hannah shook her head. I don't want your help. Too bad, Jason said, because you're getting it anyway. And he walked away. Hannah didn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about what Jason had said, about Richard wanting to meet her, about them helping her, whether she wanted it or not. Part of her was angry. Who did they think they were making decisions for her life? But another part of her, a quieter part, felt something else. Relief. And that terrified her. The next morning, she got a text from an unknown number. This is Richard Mallory. I'd like to meet you. No pressure, no expectations, just coffee. You pick the place and time. Hannah stared at the message for a long time. She should delete it. Block the number. Pretend none of this was happening, but she didn't. She typed back. Betty's Diner tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The response came quickly. I'll be there. Richard walked into the diner at exactly 9. He moved carefully, still healing. He wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt, no leather, no club colors. He didn't want to intimidate her. Hannah was already there, sitting in a booth near the back. She had a cup of coffee in front of her. She hadn't touched it. Richard slid into the seat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Hannah studied his face. He looked different than she remembered, older, tired, but his eyes were the same, intense, focused. Thank you for meeting me, Richard said finally. Hannah didn't respond. Richard nodded. I know you don't want to be here, and I know you don't want our help, but I needed to see you to say thank you in person. You don't owe me anything, Hannah said quietly. Yes, I do, Richard said. You saved my life. I did what anyone would do. No, Richard said. You didn't. Most people would have kept driving, especially someone in your situation. Hannah's eyes narrowed. What do you know about my situation? Enough, Richard admitted. I know you're working 2 jobs. I know you're raising your daughter alone. I know you're about to lose your house. Hannah's hands clenched around her coffee cup. You had no right to dig into my life. You're right, Richard said. I didn't, but I did it anyway, because I needed to understand why you stopped that night, why you stayed. Hannah looked away. It doesn't matter why. It does to me. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, My husband died in a motorcycle accident 4 years ago. Richard went still. He was riding home from work, Hannah continued. Her voice was flat, emotionless. It was late. He hit a patch of gravel, lost control. The bike went down. He was lying on the side of the road for almost an hour before someone found him. She looked at Richard now. Her eyes were dry, but there was pain in them, deep and old. By the time help arrived, he was gone. The doctor said, if someone had stopped sooner, he might have made it. Richard felt something tighten in his chest. So when I saw you lying there, Hannah said, I couldn't just drive past. Even though I hate motorcycles, even though every part of me wanted to keep going, I couldn't do it. I couldn't let someone else die alone like that. Richard didn't know what to say. Hannah wiped her eyes quickly. So, you don't owe me anything. I didn't do it for you. I did it for him. Richard leaned forward. Then, let me help you for him. Hannah shook her head. I don't want your money. It's not about the money, Richard said. It's about doing what's right. You put yourself at risk to save me. You lost work because of it. You're in trouble because you helped me. I can't just walk away from that. You can, Hannah said, and you should. No, Richard said firmly. I can't, and neither can my club. We take care of people who take care of us. That's who we are. Hannah stood up. I need to go. Hannah, thank you for the coffee, she said, and she walked out. Richard sat there alone. He didn't follow her. He just watched her leave. Jason was waiting outside when Richard came out of the diner. How'd it go? Jason asked. Richard shook his head. She's stubborn. So are you. Richard almost smiled. Yeah, I am. What now? Richard looked down the street. Hannah's car was already gone. We keep going. She doesn't have to like it, but we're not letting her lose that house. Jason nodded. The guys are already working on it. We've got a charity ride planned for next weekend. Dutch is organizing a raffle. Diane's reaching out to other clubs for donations. Good, Richard said. What's the total so far? 38,000. Richard's jaw tightened. We need 50. I know. We've got 4 weeks left. We'll get there. Richard hoped he was right. But 3 days later, everything changed. Richard was at the clubhouse when Jason came in. His face was grim. We've got a problem, Jason said. What kind of problem? Hannah lost her second job. Richard went cold. What happened? She fell asleep at work. Her supervisor found her passed out in one of the offices. They let her go. Richard swore under his breath. How much was that job worth? About $1,500 a month. Richard did the math. Without that income, Hannah wouldn't be able to make even the minimum payments. The bank would accelerate the foreclosure. How much time does she have left? Richard asked. 3 weeks, maybe less. Richard stood up. Then we move faster. The charity ride happened that weekend. Over 200 bikers showed up. They rode together through the valley, a long line of motorcycles stretching for miles. People came out of their houses to watch. Kids waved from the sidewalks. At the end of the ride, they held an auction. Donated items, motorcycle parts, custom leather work. One guy donated a vintage Harley. It sold for $12,000. By the end of the day, they'd raised another $8,000. Total $46,000. They were close, but not close enough. Richard stood in the clubhouse that night looking at the numbers on the whiteboard. 4,000 short, Dutch said. We've got 2 weeks left. We can do another fundraiser, maybe a poker run. There's no time, Richard said. Even if we pull it together, we won't make it. The room went quiet. Carter spoke up. We could ask other clubs, reach out to the network. We already did, Diane said. They sent what they could. Richard rubbed his face. He was exhausted. His ribs still hurt, but that didn't matter. What mattered was Hannah and Sophie, and making sure they didn't lose their home. I'll cover it, Richard said. Everyone turned to look at him. Boss, that's, Jason started. I'll cover it, Richard repeated. Whatever we're short, I'll make up the difference. Richard, you don't have that kind of cash lying around, Dutch said. Then I'll sell something. Jason shook his head. You can't. I can. And I will, Richard said. His voice was steel. This woman saved my life. I'm not letting her lose her home because we came $4,000 short. No one argued after that. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Richard walked into the clubhouse and found Carter waiting for him. Carter stood up. He looked uncomfortable. I need to talk to you, Carter said. About what? Carter reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to Richard. Richard opened it. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000. Richard looked up. What is this? I sold my bike, Carter said. Richard stared at him. You what? I sold my bike, Carter repeated. The soft tail I've been restoring for 3 years. Guy offered me 10 grand. I took it. Richard couldn't speak. I know I gave you grief about this, Carter said, about helping her. I thought it was a mistake. I thought we were crossing a line. He paused, looked Richard in the eye. But I was wrong. You were right. She put herself at risk to save you, and she's paying for it. We can't let that stand. So I sold the bike. It's just metal. She's got a kid, a life. That matters more. Richard's throat was tight. Carter, I can't take this. You're not taking it, Carter said. I'm giving it to her through you. Don't mention it to anyone. I don't want her to know. He walked out. Richard stood there alone, holding the check, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 2 days before the foreclosure deadline, Jason delivered the money to the bank. $56,000. Every penny they'd raised, plus Carter's sacrifice. Janet Holloway counted it twice. She looked shocked. This is enough to clear the debt and cover the next 3 months of payments, she said. Good, Jason said. Process it. Can I ask where this came from? Does it matter? Janet hesitated. Then she shook her head. No, I suppose it doesn't. She processed the payment, printed out a receipt, handed it to Jason. Tell Miss Cooper her home is safe, Janet said. Jason took the receipt. I will. That evening, Jason drove to Hannah's house. He knocked on the door. Hannah answered. She looked exhausted, defeated, like she'd already accepted losing everything. What do you want? She asked. Jason held out the receipt. Hannah took it, read it. Her eyes went wide. What is this? She whispered. Your house is paid off, Jason said. You're safe. Hannah's hands started shaking. How? I don't understand. The club raised the money, Jason said. All of it. Charity rides, auctions, donations from other clubs across the state. Everyone wanted to help. Hannah sank down onto the porch steps. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Why? She asked. Why would you do this? Because you saved Richard's life, Jason said simply, and because you deserved better than what you were getting. Sophie appeared in the doorway. Mom, what's wrong? Hannah pulled her daughter close, held her tight. Jason turned to leave. Wait, Hannah said. He stopped. Hannah stood up. She walked over to him, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked him in the eye without fear. Thank you, she said. Jason nodded. You're welcome. I need to thank Richard too. You will, Jason said. When you're ready. From that moment on, she was no longer an outsider. 3 months passed. The house still stood. The paint was still peeling. The yard was still overgrown. But it was home, and it was safe. Hannah sat on her porch steps one Saturday morning, watching Sophie play in the yard. The sun was warm. The air smelled like summer. She still worked at the diner, but she'd found a better second job, one with reasonable hours, one that let her see her daughter more than just an hour before bed. Things were different now. Not perfect, but better. She thought about the bikers often, about what they'd done for her, about Richard. She hadn't seen him since that morning at the diner, but she thought about him, about the look in his eyes when she'd told him about her husband, about how he'd wanted to help, even when she'd pushed him away. She owed him more than thanks. She owed him the truth. That afternoon, Hannah drove to the address Jason had given her weeks ago. The clubhouse was on the edge of town, a low building with motorcycles parked out front. She could hear music coming from inside, voices, laughter. She sat in her car for a few minutes. Her heart was racing. Then she got out. Sophie was with her. She'd insisted on coming. "Are these the bikers?" Sophie asked, staring at the motorcycles. "Yeah," Hannah said. "Cool." Hannah smiled despite her nerves. She took Sophie's hand and walked to the door. She knocked. The music stopped. The door opened. Jason stood there. His eyes widened in surprise. "Hannah," he said. "Hi," she said. "Is Richard here?" Jason nodded. He stepped aside. "Come in." The clubhouse went quiet when Hannah and Sophie walked in. About 15 people were inside, men and women, all wearing leather, all watching her. Richard was sitting at a table near the back. He stood up when he saw her. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Sophie let go of Hannah's hand and walked straight over to Richard. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sophie." Richard looked down at her. A small smile crossed his face. "Hi, Sophie." "I'm Richard. My mom says you helped us." Richard glanced at Hannah, then back at Sophie. "Your mom helped me first." Sophie nodded seriously. "She's really good at helping people." Richard's smile grew. "Yeah, she is." Hannah walked over. She looked at Richard, really looked at him. He was healthier now, stronger. The bruises were gone, but there was still something careful in the way he moved. "Can we talk?" Hannah asked quietly. "Of course." Richard led her outside. Sophie stayed inside with Jason, who was already showing her his motorcycle helmet. They stood in the parking lot. The sun was starting to set. The sky was turning orange and pink. Hannah took a breath. "I'm sorry." Richard frowned. "For what?" "For pushing you away, for being stubborn, for making this harder than it needed to be." "You don't need to apologize," Richard said. "Yes, I do," Hannah said. "You were trying to help me, and I treated you like you were the enemy." Richard shook his head. "You were protecting yourself and your daughter. I don't blame you for that." Hannah looked down at her hands. "I've spent the last 4 years trying to do everything on my own. After my husband died, people tried to help, but I didn't want their pity. I didn't want to be the sad widow who couldn't take care of herself. So I pushed everyone away. I told myself I was being strong, but really I was just scared." She looked up at him. "Scared that if I let anyone in, I'd lose them too." Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I get that." Hannah wiped her eyes. "I came here to say thank you for everything you and your club did. For saving my home, for giving Sophie a future, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to." "You saved my life," Richard said simply. "There's nothing to thank me for." "Yes, there is," Hannah said. "You gave me something I didn't know I needed." "What's that?" Hannah smiled, a real smile. "A family." Richard invited her to stay for dinner. The club was having a cookout. Hannah hesitated, but Sophie was already inside laughing with Diane about something. "Okay," Hannah said, "just for a little while." They stayed for 3 hours. Hannah met everyone. Dutch, who told terrible jokes. Carter, who was quiet but kind. Diane, who treated Sophie like she was her own granddaughter. They ate burgers and potato salad. They sat around a fire as the sun went down. Someone played guitar. Sophie fell asleep on a bench, her head on Hannah's lap. Richard sat next to Hannah. Neither of them said much, but it felt comfortable. Easy. "I still can't believe you did all this," Hannah said quietly. Richard looked at her. You still can't believe people care about you. Hannah didn't argue because he was right. I'm working on it, she said. Richard smiled. Good. A few weeks later, Hannah got a call from Jason. We're doing a ride this weekend, he said. Just for fun. No fundraiser, no pressure. But we'd like you and Sophie to come if you want. Hannah thought about it. I don't have a bike. You can ride with me, Jason said, or with Richard. Your choice. Hannah felt something flutter in her chest, nerves, but also excitement. Okay, she said. We'll be there. Saturday morning, Hannah and Sophie showed up at the clubhouse. There were about 20 bikes lined up, engines rumbling. The sound was loud, powerful. Sophie's eyes were huge. Mom, can I ride one? Not until you're older, Hannah said. Richard walked over. He was wearing his leather jacket, the club patch on the back. You ready? He asked. Hannah looked at the bikes, at the people, at Richard. She thought about her husband, about the accident, about all the years she'd spent hating motorcycles, blaming them for taking him away. But standing here now, she realized something. It wasn't the bike that killed him. It was the fact that nobody stopped. And these people, they would always stop. Yeah, Hannah said. I'm ready. Richard handed her a helmet, helped her put it on. Then he helped Sophie onto the back of Jason's bike. You take care of her, Hannah told Jason. With my life, Jason said, and she believed him. Richard got on his bike. Hannah climbed on behind him. Hold on, Richard said. Hannah wrapped her arms around his waist. The engine roared to life beneath them. She felt the vibration through her whole body. Her heart was pounding, and then they were moving. The ride was everything she didn't know she needed. The wind in her face, the open road stretching ahead, the sound of engines all around her, the feeling of being part of something bigger than herself. Sophie was laughing on the bike ahead of them, her arms spread wide like she was flying. Hannah felt tears on her face, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief and joy and freedom. They stopped at a diner about an hour outside of town. The whole club piled in, loud and laughing and alive. Hannah sat in a booth with Richard and Sophie. They ordered pancakes. Sophie told Richard about school, about her favorite teacher, about the book she was reading. Richard listened like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. Hannah watched them, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. On the ride back, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of gold and pink. They pulled off the road at a scenic overlook. Everyone got off their bikes, stretched, took pictures. Richard walked over to Hannah. You okay? He asked. Hannah nodded. Yeah, I'm good. He smiled. Good. They stood there together, looking out at the valley below, the road winding through it like a ribbon. I used to hate this road, Hannah said quietly. Richard glanced at her. Route 66. Yeah, it's where my husband died. I used to avoid it. Drive the long way just so I wouldn't have to see it. She paused. But the night I found you, I was too tired to take the long way. So I took the 66, and I hated every second of it until I saw you lying there. And then I didn't hate it anymore. Richard didn't say anything. He just listened. Now when I drive it, Hannah continued, I think about you, about how one bad thing can turn into something good, about how stopping on this road saved both of us. Richard looked at her. You saved me, Hannah, not the other way around. Hannah smiled. Maybe we saved each other. A few days later, Richard showed up at Hannah's house. He knocked on the door. Hannah answered. Hey, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? Richard held out a small package. I have something for you. Hannah took it. What is this? Open it. Hannah unwrapped the package. Inside was a leather jacket, small Sophie's size, and on the back, carefully stitched, was a patch. Not the full club patch, but something close. A pair of angel wings, and underneath one word, family. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. She's part of us now, Richard said. Both of you are, if you want to be. Hannah looked up at him. Richard, You don't have to say anything, Richard said. Just know that you're not alone anymore. You've got us, and we've got you. Hannah couldn't speak. She just nodded. Sophie came running out. She saw the jacket and gasped. Is that for me? She asked. Hannah handed it to her. Sophie put it on. It fit perfectly. She looked at Richard with huge eyes. Does this mean I'm a biker now? Richard laughed. When you're older, for now, you're family, and that's even better. Sophie threw her arms around him. Richard looked surprised, but then he hugged her back. Hannah watched them, and she realized something. She'd been so afraid of losing people that she'd stopped letting anyone in. But these people, they weren't going anywhere. 6 months later, Hannah was closing up the diner when her phone rang. It was Richard. Hey, she said. What's up? Can you come to the clubhouse? There's something I want to show you. Yeah, if you can. Okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. When she arrived, the clubhouse was dark. No bikes outside, no music. She walked to the door. It was unlocked. She pushed it open. The lights came on. Surprise! Hannah jumped. The entire club was there, and so were other people. Her co-workers from the diner, Sophie's teacher, the principal, even Janet Holloway from the bank. And in the center of the room was a cake with candles. Hannah stared. What is this? It's your birthday, Diane said, smiling. Hannah had forgotten. She always forgot her own birthday. How did you? Sophie told us, Richard said. He walked over. She said, you never celebrate. So, we thought we'd celebrate for you. Hannah looked around the room at all these people. People who cared, people who showed up, her family. She started crying. Sophie ran over and hugged her. Don't cry, Mom. It's a happy day. Hannah laughed through her tears. I know, baby, I know. They sang happy birthday. She blew out the candles. They ate cake and told stories and laughed until her sides hurt. Later, when most people had left, Hannah sat outside with Richard. The night was cool. The stars were out. Thank you, Hannah said. For what? For this, for everything, for not giving up on me. Richard looked at her. You made it easy. Hannah laughed. I really didn't. Richard smiled. Okay, you made it hard, but you were worth it. Hannah felt her face get warm. She looked away. Richard stood up. Come on, there's one more thing. He led her to his bike, pulled something out of the saddlebag. It was a jacket her size, black leather, and on the back, the same patch Sophie had. Family. You're one of us now, Richard said, if you want to be. Hannah took the jacket, put it on. It fit perfectly. She looked at Richard. I want to be. 3 years later, Route 66. Late afternoon, the sun low on the horizon, a convoy of motorcycles rode down the highway. 20 bikes, maybe more. In the middle of the pack, Richard rode alone, strong, healed, alive. A few bikes back, Hannah rode her own motorcycle. Sophie sat behind her wearing her jacket, arms wrapped around her mother's waist. Smiling, they passed the spot where it all began, the place where Richard had crashed, where Hannah had stopped. Richard slowed down, raised 2 fingers off the handlebar. A silent salute. Hannah did the same. The convoy kept moving together, a family bound not by blood, but by loyalty, by choice, by love. The desert stretched out around them, endless, beautiful, unforgiving. But they weren't alone in it anymore. Sometimes the people who save others are the ones who needed saving most. And on that road, they both finally found home. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness begins with a single moment of courage. When someone decides to stop for a stranger on a dark road, even though their own life is already falling apart. Hannah didn't save Richard because she expected anything in return. She stopped because she knew the unbearable pain of someone dying alone, and she refused to let it happen again. In that choice, she taught us the deepest lesson of all. Real humanity isn't found in grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's found in the tired, trembling hands that still reach out when no one would blame them for driving past. What Richard and the club gave her in return wasn't charity. It was proof that when you choose to care, the universe sometimes conspires to care back, fiercely, stubbornly, and without asking permission. They reminded her, and all of us, that no one is meant to carry everything alone. The same road that once stole her husband became the road that brought her a new family, not because life is fair, but because love, loyalty, and brotherhood can be louder than loss. So here's the truth. This story left burning in my heart. Be the person who stops. Be the person who stays. And when life finally sends someone to stop for you, let them. Because sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. If this story moved you even a little, drop A in the comments and tell me. Have you ever stopped for a stranger? Or has a stranger ever stopped for you when you needed it most? Share your moment. I read every single one. And if you want more stories that remind us we're never as alone as we think, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You're part of this family now.